Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. We are starting a new soul trait today. We are going to be focusing on the soul trait of truth. Always an interesting discussion, especially in these times. So, we will begin the way we always do with a short meditation. So, I invite you to, let's put, as my father would say, let's put a little light on the subject. There we go. So, I invite you to relax and close your eyes
Not me.
and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come in your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car move by on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema, and on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. And yes, thank you, Gil, for not closing your eyes. That was, you know, safety first. So hello, Beth and Harry and Barbara and Susan. Great to see you all. Okay, so we will get started exploring the soul trait of truth. But of course, before we get to truth, we want to let's just wrap up on loving kindness a little bit. And did it show up at all for you on your Musar journey in the last week? Was there a practice you tried? Or if you weren't here the last couple of weeks, you could just do a different kind of check-in, maybe a way that you were challenged, and how you approached it, whether maybe it went well, maybe it didn't. I'll stop the share and open it up. Who would like to begin? Yes, Sue.
I just had a simple thing that we talked about opening doors as a simple act of kindness, and I really practiced that intentionally all week, and I felt good about just wonderful reactions. People were surprised and happy and smiled, and we said good
Hmm.
morning. It was mostly at the health club where I go to, but I also talked with every person I saw at the store, at the grocery store, and anywhere I went.
Ah, wonderful. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think the smaller the better. When it comes to like the big dramatic thing, it's very hard to sustain those. But when we do the small things, like Sue was describing, when that moment arrives where there's an opportunity to maybe do something a little bit bigger, it's much easier because we've exercised that muscle.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what was your experience? Because I've been in the habit of saying good morning or when I'm on a walk or hello in the evening, and you know, it's a variable response. I would say it's maybe only half the people actually respond. What, and also in trying to do conversations in stores, so kind of something similar. What was your experience?
Well, I would just say, I think that the opening the door is an as an action that prompts that people are surprised by that and happy, and they every time they responded. I don't know. I'm in a Minnesota state of mind, and and we're very neighborly right now and helping everybody. So any kindness is really appreciated. And so maybe we're in a different. I'm not sure where you're living, but in Minnesota, it's all about neighbors and what can we do to help. So maybe that's why I got a positive response, but it was definitely positive.
Oh, okay, well, I'm in California, but I spent 8 weeks in Wilmer, Minnesota. Do you know where Wilmer is?
Yes,
It's
I
about
do.
90. Oh, okay. And and also I spent time in Chicago, and there is a totally different mindset in the Midwest as far as interacting with people than in the coasts. My daughter went to Wisconsin, and they identified people from New York and California as coasties. Um, so definitely a different attitude or mindset where you're living.
Hmm. Oh, we got Bonnie's got a little
I'm a badger. Oh, I'm a badger. So you can't see it, but the rest of the group can. And Wisconsin was just listed in Time magazine as the second top state university in the country.
hmm, cool. Other experiences, Beth.
Um, my car, I had car trouble this week, and it was kind of a small thing, but I took it to the mechanic, and he said, "Well, I called him and I said, can I sit and wait while you check the car?" And he said, "No, we're going to need it overnight." So, but I just was I didn't get upset about it. I just was okay, fine, looked at my calendar. I don't need the car today or tomorrow, so no problem. And then he sent me the estimate, which was huge. And I still reacted saying, okay, fine, it is what it is. And thank you for breaking it down so I could pay in different amounts with the more necessary things first. And then he had to keep it another night because one of the parts didn't come in. And I still was very friendly about it. I said, "Oh, well, okay, I need it by lunchtime." And he said, "Fine, we'll have it ready for you. Not a problem." And I think he was surprised that, he's got to keep my car and I'm not frantic and yelling at him about, get your mechanics in gear and what have you. And I think he was, quite pleased when I came to pick up my car. He's very friendly. He opened the door for me, and um, I think just being kind to people because they take so much abuse when they really don't deserve it. So that was my act of Hesed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Beth. Yes, Susan.
Thank you. In light of what you're saying about small steps, I'm the chair of a committee, and I sent an email out this week asking people to respond, would they be willing to do X, Y, or Z? And then, unlike me, usually, because I was in the middle of doing tons of work for this, every response that came back, I said, okay, I'm going to respond to all these people to say thank you, to acknowledge that they have stepped up. just to take that moment. Because when other people have done that for me, it's felt so good. And I said, all right, I can do this. I'm going to take, an extra 2 minutes per
Mm,
person just to do that little thing.
wonderful. Thank you. Hey, Nancy, so nice to see you. Glad you could make it today. We're just doing, I know you haven't been here in a little while, but we're just doing our check-in at the beginning, and we've been working on Chesed. People are talking about small things that have come up for them. So, Aileen,
Um, well, more opening doors at the gym with very positive reactions on both sides. Um, and then yesterday I was in line at the drugstore and anyway, I just talked to the person behind me. She seemed a little bit uncomfortable standing there, and I complimented her on her dress, which was really pretty. And that kind of opened up things, and we started talking about the snow and slipping on the ice
hmm,
and all that business, but developed just this little tiny relationship by
hmm.
doing that. Um, and I think it felt good on both sides.
Oh, that's great. It's so rare that we like actually connect with a stranger, and having just a
Yeah,
little tiny connection. Sounds like it was very nurturing for both
it
of you.
was.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
My father's been ill for a while and has had battling pneumonia. He was in the hospital. Now he's in a rehab place, and the social worker and the discharge planner has just been incredibly rude to people in my family who've been there and friends who visited. And so there was like a call with her today with my stepmother and some of the other care planners with this person. And I have to say, I spoke to her like a week or two ago, and I really lost my cool at that point and really kind of took the stuffing out of her a little bit. And even though, as my grandmother would say, she had it coming, I did apologize kind of by the end of the call, but today in the meeting, I really was able to stay centered. I asked my questions. I did so what I'm hearing is, and all this person talks about is, you know, when the insurance coverage runs out. And well, we can keep until this date and 3 weeks from now, because that's how long the insurance lasts. And I'm like, well, maybe he'll be ready to go home sooner than that. It's like, oh yes, well, if he's ready sooner, the insurance will kick him out sooner. And I'm like, okay, I'm just not getting into that. So I was able to keep a much my kindness was just being professional in this circumstance and not kind of getting into my judging, I'm happy um, self.
Yeah, I was gonna comment on dealing with people, particularly like the mechanics story and customer service. In I'm having to watch my tone of voice because it's more than just what you say. And I don't know if in when you were talking to the social worker and everything, if and also I try and kind of step outside the box and say, I've had a bad time with this and getting different stories, and you'll have to excuse me if I'm being a little intense here. I tend to get emotional. It's something I'm working on.
Mm,
I'm not trying to be critical, but and if I seem out of line, let me know. But here are the questions. So I've I've tried to work on those techniques and tried to modulate my voice. So I'm just curious about when you were in this environment, what was happening internally, and um, what how hard it was for you to be professional and kind. because it's work, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think I had time to prepare this time, and it wasn't sort of earlier, there was a little bit of a crisis was going on, and it was kind of unclear. And his overall care has been good. So I was really able to, there's the don't act like you're angry and don't get angry. It's like if you get angry, try not to act like you're angry. But I kept my equanimity pretty well today. So, and I just kind of came in with that mindset and had a pre-call with some texts with my stepmother. It's like these are the key issues we want to get to. And I thought of a few more, and I just asked my questions. And and then when she got into like oh, I don't know about that. You need to speak to this person. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll speak to that person, and not because they are who they are. And so I was happy that I was able to keep my equanimity today. And, none of us are perfect and we don't always do that. And I share with you that, certainly my tone of voice, my word choice, all of that was not not at all my best self in the prior, but we want to defend our family members too. And even though wasn't particularly helpful, the approach I took, but the good news was by, halfway through the call, I had recentered and apologized and was able to get through. So other
Yeah,
folks.
I think that's my experience. I realize now that I'm doing it. Before I would just go off and then I wouldn't realize it until after I had, you know, gotten off. And now I sort of realize it in the middle and dial it back. And I also find that when I've reacted like that, I now turn around and question why that happened. And so the second time, like today when you made that call, I've sort of uh, analyzed what happened the first time and am better the second time. So
Mhm.
I kind of mirror your experience with that.
Thank you, Gil. Yeah, Sue.
Yeah, I want to say I've been there, and even the Minnesota Nice is, and I think what happens to me is that my emotions take over.
Hmm.
And I love that you prepared, so that was good, and you thought about it ahead of time. But in the moment, emotions. And this happened to me recently too, where I lost it. And I thought later if I could maybe apply compassion instead, and it's not about me, but just be compassionate in the situation. I don't think it's hard to do that, but it's another way of
Yeah,
framing
and that's kind of the Mussar challenge. It's like what Rabbi Pear called increasing the distance between the match and the fuse, but fuse is still there. And I know for sure that the distance was bigger. I did not lose my cool as quickly as I would have, but I did lose it, and that will happen. And so, this training, this practice, this preparation, the different strategies, practicing compassion, practicing other things, they they do help. And as Gil said, and sometimes, and it's okay when it happens, it's part of the human experience. And we have an opportunity to, catch ourselves to do better in the moment or after the moment. Yeah, Bonnie.
So there's a really cool line that I picked up from Al-Anon, which is make a mistake, make an amends.
Mm,
And it's something that um, I have to think about all the time because I don't want to judge people.
mm,
I may judge the actions, but I don't want to judge the person.
mhm,
Um, and especially my adult kids.
mm,
And so I've had to learn to say, are you asking me my opinion?
mm,
And about a week and a half ago, my son was sharing something with me, and I started to give him my opinion. And he said, but I didn't ask you.
Hmm.
And I said, you're right. And I am sorry. And I will wait until you ask me. Now, the hands were like this. The and so I've learned that yes, I have holes in my tongue from biting it and shutting up.
Hmm.
It's they're adults. They have families. I think if my parents, who never gave me their opinion ever, stepped in, I would have been upset too.
Mhm.
So it's not just people that you're interacting with, whether it's a representative or
Yeah.
it's your own family.
Yeah. And this is, thank you for sharing that, Bonnie. And Mussar centers relate human relationships and building those, preserving those, and it's kind of, yeah. So and it helps. It helps. All right, what a fantastic set of check-ins. Let's go a little bit deeper. Um, so let's start talking about truth. So, um, so there's this idea of the Hebrew word is emet. Um, only the divine sits on the throne of truth. Only the divine can kind of see everything in its entirety, its beginning, its middle, its end, to really understand what's going on in the universe. And of course, if you're not sure about the divinity, then, it's okay, well, then none of us have that perception. And that's what these next two bullets talk about. So may I have a volunteer to unmute and to read them?
We'll read them. What is the truth? Emet. Only God sits on the throne of truth. Humans have limited perceptions and faulty memory, meaning that each of us can have our own version of the truth. Truth is learning to see the truth from another's perspective. As it says, execute the judgment of truth. Zechariah 8:16.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to stop the share and then I'll copy these. And I went to a teaching the other day, and the person, it was a Jewish teacher, and they would say sort of thoughts, reactions, rebellions, you know. Um, and so, what do you think about this idea that humans, we can each have our own version of the truth? Susan.
Uh, this requires real conscious empathy. Empathy being putting yourself in another person's place and seeing the world as they see it. And I was thinking about that as we were talking about the people that we find difficult, some of the arguments that we heard discussed just a minute ago, that um, when I'm my best self, I
Mm,
put myself in their place and I say, oh, how overwhelmed that person must be, or how difficult it must be to have all these meetings with families, or, I try
mm,
to, in a conscious way, what is that person's perspective? What is, I never say what is their truth, but I think that's what we're talking about here.
yeah.
Can I see the truth from their point of view? But I know in other Mussar groups I'm in, we really struggle with this because we think there are some things that are absolutely true, and but that there at the same time are lots of opinions. And
Mm,
so maybe your version, my version of the truth, your version of the truth, if it's something that can have versions, that maybe those are our opinions and not
mm,
necessarily facts. It's our experience of the world. And
right.
we have different experiences of the world, or we see things differently. But that's separate from, there are some basic facts out there if we can only uncover them.
Yeah. Well said, Susan. Thank you.
I was going to mention that people can look at a video, the same video,
Mm-hmm.
and see very different things.
Yeah.
Watching that same identical video, and we will pull out different things and therefore make a completely different conclusion about what transpired.
Yeah. And that's why there are book clubs, right? That's why
Mm.
there are classes discussing movies. Like, what was going on there? You know? Yeah, that's a great point, Caroline. Or three people are in a conversation. What do we agree on? You know, sometimes come away with different things. So Aileen and then Sue Lund.
Well, I was just thinking, it reminds me that it's sort of like we all have our own unique Polaroid film inside. And so a situation occurs and it interacts with that Polaroid film, which is our unique life experience. And it truly does change the way we look at it.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting when I think what Susan said, that there probably are some ultimate truths, and I tend to believe that. But where we get stuck are the nuances around those truths because of the way that we're different.
Yeah. Thank you, Aileen.
Yeah.
Let's see. And who did I say was next? Sue.
I had a couple comments. This discussion is reminding me of Talmud because I've been delving into Talmud a bit. And it always seems like there's, well, or even being Jewish, the three opinions, right? What, what happens when Talmud is there's no definitive answer.
Zoom
And they
meeting.
go back and forth in terms of what is the truth.
Yeah.
And in Judaism, we always have different opinions. So there's that. The other thing in the
12,
quotes
10,
was
8, 7.
um, where it said, only God sits on the throne of truth.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard that before. I was fascinated by thinking about that. And I think, well, to me it means, God all knowing, God can see everything, and we're limited. I did say that we were limited
Yeah.
in our perspective. So that was kind of fascinating. Is only God could really know what's going on and the truth.
Yeah.
And I was taught once the word emet is like the beginning, the middle, the end. The emet, the first letter, the is the aleph, and then the mem is in the middle, and then the is it the tet or the tav is it the so it's the whole picture. But
Yeah.
it's so curious that only God can see this in the quote.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. And forgot what I was going to say, but it doesn't matter. What you said was really good, so I don't need to say anything. All right, well, let's look at the spectrum of truth because this helps us, or it introduces this issue about, well, is there anything that's objective? Is there anything that, what Susan was talking about? And so the mantra is be distant from falsehood. And so let's even, let's focus on that. Let's not even look at the spectrum. Maybe we'll get to the spectrum next week, but be distant from falsehood. What does that mean to you? How does that relate to kind of what we're talking about? Yeah, I think it's important and powerful to be able to see things from others' perspective. Be distant from falsehood. Beth.
Um, this is something I grappled with a couple of years ago. When telling a story, it's so tempting to exaggerate, to make the story bigger and better, bigger contrast, whatever. And I realized that exaggeration is not truth. That that it might make a better story, but it doesn't make a better me. And I realized that I need to think about carefully what I'm going to share. And then a little comment on Sue's thing. I do the Daf Yomi on Talmud, and I'm learning that it's okay to have a different opinion. And I can have a huge discussion with somebody about something. I really think Scripture is truth, the Word of God, the Torah. I know not everybody does, but even when we're discussing that, people have different opinions, and that's okay. And I can still be friends with them.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. You brought up an important point, but I want to hear from, which I'll circle back to, but I want to hear from Michael first.
Yeah, I like what I could echo most of what Beth said. For me, the challenge is often the opposite, though, and that is sharing too little. So to me, I'm taking this as a nudge to share fully and completely, because I can't expect other people to know my state of mind or what I'm feeling if I don't share it, and that in its own right is a gift.
Yeah. So you both gave really good examples of something, which gave me a little bit of an insight into this dilemma that Susan brought up a little while ago. It's like, well, are there things that, is there anything that's objective out there? And where does falsehood come in? And there are some things that just seem to be true. And what Michael and Beth brought in was sharing our own truth. Because ultimately, Mussar is a journey of the self, of personal growth. And am I either embellishing, where I'm not being fully truthful because I'm embellishing, or on Michael's side, I'm not being fully truthful because I'm withholding, because I'm not sharing my full perspective. And that's really hard to do, by the way, is something, especially even with people that we're close to, it requires some vulnerability. What if I'm rejected? What if I ask for something and it's really important to me and my loved one says no, or my boss says no, or whatever? And so that's not a lens. I'd never thought of this soul trade in that way before. Exactly. I mean, I've been around it, but that's really crystallized something for me. It reminds me of a teaching from Rabbi Israel Salanter, who was one of the great Mussar teachers and started the Mussar movement and really revolutionized a big portion of yeshiva education in Lithuania. But he said people are concerned about their own stomachs and other people's spirituality, and they should be concerned about their own spirituality and other people's stomachs. And in a similar way, maybe we should be concerned about whether other people are being truthful and be more concerned about whether we're being truthful and whether we're in the right place with our own truths. So, Susan, I'm curious, what do you think about that in response to the issue you raised earlier?
Being concerned with my own truth.
Yeah.
When I was working through the chapter for truth, I had a head start because my Vaad was working on that for the last week. But working on that, I loved the list of the 9 ways that people are liars. And then your notes about the 3 different reasons that people would lie, so that I could say to myself, well, in what way am I a liar? Right. That I think it's the human condition. We're all going to lie somewhat. And again, on your spectrum, sometimes we're going to lie on purpose, for peace in the house. But then, when do I lie for my own gain? And so I'm one of those people. I'm a real storyteller, and I do love to embellish a story. And so that has been something that I've been working on, to just, tell fewer stories. Yeah.
That reminds me of something that I've struggled with a little bit is AI. And there's some rabbis that will use AI to write their sermons, which I would never do. That's just not my thing. But I do sometimes make videos about things, and then I take the transcript and I use AI to make a blog post version of it, and then I'll edit it. And I decided that I need to disclose that's what I'm doing. And at the bottom I said, Shabbat Shalom, Bonnie. I'm glad you could be here. Um, so, because I felt like that's where I needed to be truthful. And so maybe is there a version of, and I'm not giving advice, I'm just thinking for my own sake, maybe okay, so I may embellish this story a little bit, for theatrical purposes or something. So I don't know. Toby, I see your hand.
Oh,
Well, I suppose the other end of the truth falsehood thing is um, when to tell the whole truth and when to tell a partial truth. And is it okay to tell a partial truth? And when I was studying the 8 limbs of yoga, got into that. We had a whole class on when to speak. And I think I've heard it the 8 different reasons that you should not say something. Is it true? Am I the person that should be telling this story? Is it
Hmm.
timely? All of those things that I'm sure we're all familiar with. But um, I've tried before. Man, my mouth moves faster than my brain sometimes, and well, most of the time, actually. But I find that I have to really stop and say, look, why are you, is this Lashon Hara? Is this gossip that you are, useless gossip that you are spreading to whoever? Or is this something that this person needs to know? Like, they got a big chunk of lettuce in their teeth. Those things that are helpful and those things that are just plain old gossip. And I sometimes I have trouble telling the difference. Or I'm on a roll and I'm talking to somebody and I'm wandering into the woods of gossip. And I have to stop myself and say, this is not, you should not be sharing all this. This is not something that's going to enlighten anybody. And it's only going to make the person that we're talking about feel bad once they find out that we talked about it. So anyway, just to shed light on the other side of
Yeah.
truth, and then maybe,
Thank you, Toby. Susan and then Martin.
because you were talking about embellishment, I think one of the things that I've been thinking for myself is it depends on whose benefit it's for. If I'm embellishing for my benefit so that I look better, so you think more highly of me, that's a kind of lying. If I'm embellishing a story for your benefit because I'm teaching or because I'm counseling or whatever it is I'm doing, making it an interesting story with a point I don't think of as lying. I feel like it's, just one way of teaching. And I guess that's how I feel about you using AI to make your blog better.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily lying, it's using all the tools at your disposal to have an interesting and thoughtful blog.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. So we'll have Martin and then Aileen and then Sue, and then we're going to go to breakout rooms.
Hi, I often will embellish the story, and I'm using my judgment because whatever I say or how I say it, my goal is to how does it further the relationship with the person I'm speaking with.
Hmm.
Everyone, we all have our levels of not AI, but EI, emotional intelligence. I'm gonna use my judgment to embellish the story so the relationship moves ahead. So, um, uh, it- I wouldn't call it lying. It's just embellishment. Maybe put a little different flavor on it. But again, the goal is how do you further the relationship with this person I'm speaking with. So that's when I embellish. So, yeah.
Thank you, Martin.
I think all I wanted to say, which I think is obvious, but I'm throwing it in here to get the whole picture in it, is as far as distancing oneself from falsehood, is that for me, it also means staying away from people who are dealing with falsehoods.
Mm,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And yeah, there's a lot of time. Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks for itself. Um, uh-oh, I did something weird on my computer. I lost everybody. Okay, you're back. Okay, let's take a look at our prompt for the breakout rooms. So Rabbi Carol Glass wrote in the Mussar Torah commentary, truth is the sole trait of inclusive, respectful regard, both for what is apparent and what remains undetected.
Hmm.
That's just kind of interesting with what we were
Mhm.
talking about embellishing and maybe under disclosing for both what is obvious as well as what may elude us or be hidden from us. Um, so when there's an intense disagreement with someone, what is the hidden truth that they have access to that you don't? And how might this
Mhm.
perspective help you manage the conflict? So you have having a disagreement, maybe they have a hidden truth. That's a interesting and provocative question. Um, hey, David, welcome. Let's see.
Hey, Rabbi.
Um, I'm going to redo the breakout room. So uh, David is here. Okay, the rooms are open.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Well, we had such a great discussion early on that we were a little bit squeezed for the breakout rooms. So we're going to go. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. So we're going to go speed round if people want to share insights they had, and I will give preference to people who have not spoken yet. If anyone who hasn't shared their perspectives, you can go first. If not, we're happy to hear from anyone in the full group. So what came up in those discussions? Is there any insight you had that you'd like to share?
I will.
Yes, Nico.
Hi. I'll just share briefly that we linked the trait to other traits like equanimity or humility
Hmm.
or honor, because respecting someone else's perspective means respecting them, means also practicing patience, to have time to practice humility, honor, and equanimity. So
Yeah.
it's sort of groups. I mean, we always find links between all the traits, but this one is pretty obvious. Loving kindness is another one that links easily with truth.
Yeah, and you may have mentioned this one in your list, so apologies for this repetition. Also, people are talking about when do we speak? That's silence, right? Am I speaking too much? Am I speaking too little? Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, Nico. Who else would like to share something? Yes, Beth.
Toby had a great suggestion um, to instead of focusing on the person that is not being cooperative, in your opinion, to make it a we problem. And this is really results oriented because
Hmm.
it makes things go smoother, faster. You get to a resolution by saying, how can we find a solution to this problem that we're having? And I she explained it better than I'm doing, but I found it very helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Well, I will comment on that and then oh yes, Barbara.
Sorry. Eileen actually brought up as we were having discussions about disagreements and underlying truths is sometimes you don't even know what your hidden truth is. That sometimes it takes time and perspective to figure out what the truth is that you're hiding from yourself in a disagreement.
Yeah. That's really that's very insightful. Yeah, I don't even know what I think about complicated issues or even simple issues sometimes. And so knowing our own truth, love that, Elaine. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that, Barbara. All right, my friends. Well, there is a lot more to be explored, which we will get into next week. But for now, we'll just close our eyes to close our sacred space. So taking a nice leisurely inhale and a nice leisurely exhale. Maybe we'll all ask ourselves, what is true for me in this moment? What are my true feelings? What is important to me? Am I being called upon for in this time? And let's also make some room for gratitude, for finding those things that are good, even if times seem more difficult. And I'm certainly feeling very grateful for all of you for sharing this journey with me today and for being your true selves when we're together. When you're ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you all so much for being here this week. If you are watching the recording, thank you. It is not always easy to watch an hour-long conversation amongst other people, so we appreciate you being here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.